Hey writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Laura, Kobo Writing Life's author engagement manager.
And I'm Rachel, the promotion specialist at Kobo Writing Life.
On today's episode, we spoke to best-selling author Jodi Drake, who is an author with multiple series published in several countries. She was born and raised in Nova Scotia, Canada, and later moved to Southern California. She has 23 books published with lots more on the way.
We had such a fun and interesting conversation with JL. We talked a lot about writing both lighter and darker romances and really focused on the interconnected universe she's created within her series and how she keeps all of the moving pieces and all of her characters straight. And we also talked about the challenges she's overcome as an author with dyslexia, which I found incredibly interesting. We learned a lot from this conversation with JL, and we hope you do too. And we hope you enjoy. We are joined today by romance author J.L. Drake. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
To kind of start things off, can you tell us and our listeners a little bit about yourself and the types of books you write?
Sure. I have been writing for almost 10 years, and I started writing, believe it or not, mythical books. And I started there. I got about halfway through and was like, "Whoa, this is definitely not me." I give props to those that can write that because it's just not me. And I thought, okay, well, what do I love? And I love James Patterson and I love romance. So I decided to combine the two. So I write romantic suspense novels, basically as many twists and turns you can have in a story. You'll find it in mine. I'm horrible. I love to give readers cliffhangers because I just think that it's life and I think that they're fun.
But you were mentioning that you like to leave cliffhangers. Now I have a question because romance fans are very avid about their happily ever after. Do you solve that and leave a cliffhanger? How do the ends of your books work here to appease the romance readers out there?
Yes. And you know what? I wouldn't want to read a book that strings you along the whole entire way and then not give you a happily ever after. So I definitely always give those, but I will rip your heart out and stomp on it at the end of every book or leave you in a gasp. But when it comes to the last book, you will always be guaranteed a happily ever after.
Now, you kind of write on both sides of the romance spectrum, like kind of the darker romance, and then you write some lighter stuff as well. What's it like for you as an author kind of going back and forth, and what drew you to kind of that darker side of the genre?
I would say I love dark romance. I think life is not pretty. And I think if you're somebody who's been through things, and it doesn't have to be necessarily love, but if you've been through things in your life, you tend to get slightly jaded. And the way that I've dealt with my jaded parts is I embrace it. I write it. So I love the darker side of romance. However, I like there to be a balance in my life so that I don't go too far. So I write, the dark, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to write the light. So I try to kind of even myself out, but I definitely like writing on the darker side more than anything.
I was going to ask if you find the lighter side is kind of like a reprieve from all of the dark and twisty nature of the romantic suspense books.
Yeah, it's definitely a palate cleanser for sure. And it just kind of depends on what the year brings me or what whatever's going on. I kind of just use it through writing. It's my own brand of therapy, and I've made it into a career and get paid for it, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, I just try to even it out. I think that's the best thing for me.
And when it comes to like release scheduling, do you have like, okay, I'm going to do like darker, lighter, darker, or is it really just your mood that kind of carries you and dictates how you release your books, or a bit of both?
Perhaps a bit of both. I've created a world of 25 to 30 books, even though not all 30 are out yet, where I've really kind of mixed a good dark and light. So I don't know. Yes, mood definitely determines on what I want to write, but it's also whatever characters are speaking to me at the time as well. And I'm an incredibly vivid person. I mean, I can sit here and talk to you, but I'm also can be in a field, or I could be, anyway, like I'm incredibly visual and I have like a big creative thing going on all the time. And so it kind of just depends on what characters talking to me. There are more characters that talk, more than others. And so if they're pulling me in that direction, I'll tend to go that way. But as far as, it's really just comes down to what I'm feeling at the time and who's speaking the loudest. It sounds psychopathic, but it's the truth.
No, that sounds totally normal for an author, and we hear that a lot. So you're definitely not the first person to talk to us about their voices. How do you keep all of kind of like the moving pieces of your different characters straight?
It comes back down to being vivid, and being a functioning schizophrenic, I guess. It's just, they're so real to me. I see them so clearly. And I guess they're such people, they're such personalities. Sometimes I may not always see their face, but I can always hear them. And so they definitely, they keep themselves pretty well in line just because the personalities are so strong. Side characters, anybody can tell you that works with me. I'll thread them through and then forget I killed them off or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go back. But the main characters definitely help me keep things in order.
Well, and when we were setting up this interview, you said, and this is a quote, that you are someone who was standing in front of a constantly moving murder board. And that's because not only are you keeping all these characters straight, but your books exist within the same universe. Mm-hmm. How did you decide to do this, to kind of create this, I want to say multiverse of madness, but it's not really a multiverse.
That's a really good question. It just happened. I grew up reading James Patterson, and he has the Alex Cross series, and then I think Alex Cross, I might be wrong here, but, goes through other stories as well of his. And I always thought that was kind of cool. And so I think, well, you know what? The truth be told is I didn't want to let them go. I love them too much. And I didn't like the idea of a series ending. So that's usually why, I can't write a standalone to save my life. And when I did, it was priceless. But yeah, I just find the multiverse, or whatever you want to call it, the world just created itself because I couldn't let them go. And I guess that's probably the best answer I could give you on that one.
Well, and I feel like as somebody who loves, and I'm going to relate a little bit to TV on this one, but as somebody who loves to exist in the same universe, it's almost like a treat for your readers who finish one series, move on to the next, like, oh, that character, I saw them before. It's almost like
like an Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, that is what I try to do. I try to lay Easter eggs, and I am getting so much better as I go in my career with laying Easter eggs everywhere. And I'll say to people, did you catch this? Did you catch that? Like later on to my reader group, just to have them kind of play along with me. Like, I'm leaving you breadcrumbs everywhere as I go, and I leave a lot of breadcrumbs for what's to come as well. And when you start to know my writing, you start to see what's going to come. So it's kind of fun.
So you mentioned that you kind of thread your characters through your different series. How much advanced planning do you do with that? Or is it kind of just based on mood to figure out which character has a book coming up next?
I think sometimes I plan it. Like the series I'm writing right now for 2024, definitely I saw coming in the series I'm releasing now. So it kind of happens. I have one particular series that I consistently thread through a lot of my stuff, and that would be Devil's Reach. That's my MC series. It's my darker one. I don't know why, but he always wants to pop up and be there. So I guess, yeah, probably a little bit of planning. As the years go on and as I write more and I see the way that I can write, which is lots of twists and turns and webbing, I'm getting better at seeing what I want to have come up. So yeah, it's kind of just something that kind of just happens, and sometimes it's planned. It's kind of just, I guess whatever decides to pop up.
And you mentioned your characters so well that you're able to kind of keep them straight. But do you ever find yourselves having to go back and read previous books to be like, okay, exactly how did I describe this character? Or what is the cadence of their voice?
Okay, so a lot of authors I talk to hate reading their own work. I'm like, hi, I'm over here on my own island going, I love my books. I do. I'm my biggest fan. I'm such a loser, but it's the truth. I think it's so important to go back and read your own work. It makes you better. And when I read my first series that I wrote, Darkness, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, folks. But you know what? You grow from it and you learn. But yes, I absolutely have to go back. My main characters, for the most part, I've got in here. A couple of the sides, if they've really stuck out, absolutely, they're fine. They're always there. But yes, I'm always going back. I'm always making sure that I am getting what they did, what they look like or whatever. And I have to be completely fair here. I rely a lot on my street team, my reader group. I've got a fact finding group. You name it, I've got it, because my character, my cast in each story, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I have a cast of like 57 people. Like, who does that? But it's just because I want to have a whole bunch of people around me. So I do. And because of that, though, there's a lot of times where I'll run out of names or, I have to go back. So I have like character audits where I've got characters broken down and all that kind of stuff. And I use it, but I tend to write quite fast and in spurts. So I like to go to my fact finding group and say, okay, in this book I did this. Who is this character? And then they go and find them. So it's a team effort. I really have to be honest about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were doing all of that yourself, because that can kind of become a big job, going through everything and doing your own audit. So that's cool that you have a team that helps you with all the fact finding.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned kind of knowing in advance which book is going to, or which character is going to come next. So in your previous books, do you kind of set readers up to learn more about the character who's coming next? And how do you do that?
Yes. So yeah, if you've you read my books kind of from the reading order I suggest, which now I think is going to have to be set in stone here soon because I'm very webby. Yes, I set them up. So I tend to bring in a side character and develop them, whether in a positive or a negative way, normally a little bit positive, or mysterious. And I will sprinkle them through the series. So, and there's obviously other characters as well that are doing the same. I obviously don't want to make it too obvious who's about to come out. But I kind of just lace them through and make sure that there's they're a part of something big. And then I'll kind of sprinkle a little bit more as the series goes on. And then usually by the last book, you can kind of see what's happening. And then I pull them through. So that's typically how I do it.
And you've touched on how you keep your character straight, but you've also said there's a web being weaved. That's the past tense, right? Thank you. How do you keep that all straight in your head? Or do you also have like a plot breakdown, or do you rely on your research group as well?
A bit of both. I definitely say, I have a lot of it up in here. My murder board is up in here. I used to put my murder board on my board, and my children would sit there and look at it and go, okay, like mom's crazy. So I tend to kind of pull back a little bit for making it so visual. But it's definitely, I do really well, and which you would not think I would, given, kind of what other things I have going on. But I think because I see things so clearly that the murder board makes a lot of sense to me in my head. I also have two main girls, Liz and Jamie, that I will plot with, and I call it spinning, because I will spin right off the axle and I'll come up with an idea, and then they'll unravel a little bit for me, and then I'll go off in my craziness, and they're like, okay, she's good, so that's very helpful too, having them, because they'll go, wait now, because they've got memories like an elephant. It's amazing. And they'll say, wait now, remember back in, Broken Days, and you did that. You can't do that because that's going to affect that. I'm like, oh, that's right. So it's I would probably say it's a mix between being very visual and seeing it inside, but also having those two girls, or everyone finds this kind of funny, or my mother. I was so lucky. I have the best mother in the entire world that runs very closely with me in my books, very closely. She's an alpha reader. She'll read right along with me as I write. Not many people have a romance author that will have a mom be right there going, I don't think this sex scene works. Why don't we try it this way? So anyways, again, it takes a whole kind of village, but it definitely helps being an extremely visual person.
I'm really curious how this being a visual person affects your writing process. Do you kind of see a story play out and then put it to paper? Are you seeing an outline and going from an outline? What does your writing process look like? I used to be a pantser, so I used to just write, and kind of have it happen. And that sort of works, but I've discovered that plotting a little bit on the computer, each chapter helps. But being visual the way that I am, I will sometimes see a scene play out and then I write it, or I'll write it and it's playing out. It's literally like I'm in the scene. Some people will see it like a movie on a screen. It's 360. I'm in IMAX or whatever you want to call it that. So it's kind of, I guess my process would be, trying to plot it out on paper and then writing it and just being there in it. I mean, I can smell, hear, taste everything. It's weird, but it helps. And I just have to ask, do you ever find yourself adding in too much description that you then have to pull back because you are seeing things so vividly? Or have you kind of been able to curb that a bit?
I'd like to think I've gotten better. My Broken Trilogy was this kind of the first book that went out, but was the second series I wrote, and it's very detailed. It was actually one of the things that people said that they loved so much about the story was that it was so detailed. So I have a bit of a teeter-totter there. I try really hard to be careful and not give too much description, because I know when I'm reading a book, I'm like, I get it. The glass is wet. Okay, I get it. It's got condensation. So I try really hard not to do that. But it can be a struggle. But I think I've gotten better over the years to sort of give detail where needed. And a lot of, Alison Torio has great classes on just make sure it's important to be there. And if it's not, take it out.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your publishing journey as well. So did you always know that you wanted to be an indie author, or was that a bit of a journey to get to that?
Oh boy, my story's different. I didn't set out to ever be an author. I didn't set out to ever want to write a story in my life. In high school, if I passed English class with a 50, I was so excited. I just wanted to get the heck out of those classes. I wasn't good at them. Quickly shows you that you got to love what you do. So for my writing journey, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a friend basically say that she wrote a book and put it on Amazon. I kid you not, something inside me just went click, I can do that. I've really been into acting my whole life. And then my father was a storyteller around the dinner table. And anyway, so I fell into this. So, the idea of being traditionally published, of course, in the beginning was obviously ideal. But I didn't know anything. I just was like, I'm just going to write. I didn't even know the story structure of how you even write a story. I just wrote it and gave it to an editor, and she was like, oh, sweet Jesus. So, we're just going to help this one along. So God bless her. But anyways, so I put it up and I did indie. So I threw it up on Amazon, and, I think I had like 24 sales, and I'm like, oh my God, 24 people read my story, and then, so I guess technically I was indie first, always wanted to go ring the traditional bell. I was at a signing years ago, I think it was like 2014, and I ran into the amazing Monica James from Australia. And I just went up to her with my little book, and I was like, hi, so I wrote a book. I'm not one of those people that are like, can you take it and push it? I was just like, do you have any suggestions? And she was so sweet and said, what, why don't you submit it to a small press publisher and see what happens? Like, why don't you try mine? So she gave me the one that she was with at the time. And I ended up submitting both series, my Darkness and Broken. And they said, well, we'll take Broken. And I said, no, we're taking Broken. You got to take Darkness too. And they said, oh, okay. So they took the books, and I got to give credit where credit is due. They slingshot, they just shot me forward. And I don't know if I was ahead of the romantic suspense wave at the time, but I took off and did, I think really well for being, really not knowing what I'm doing, put a name on the map. And, and it's been a journey ever since. I have moved on from them and just kind of done just indie myself without any type of small press pub. And that's been an adjustment. I also, thanks to Monica again, was able to land myself a sub-rights agent, Kimberly Brower, while you're navigating the indie world, because there is a lot to know, to do, and to have someone in your pocket, that's not pocket, but have someone by your side. That is.
So after you were with the small press, you moved back into indie. What was that transition like for you?
It was different. I jumped from KU to Wide, and it was a little bit of I'm on the island by myself now, and I'm not really sure what to do with myself. It was hard. That's a really hard question. It was good, but it was hard. It's not easy doing that transition from KU to Wide. You're literally a speck on the map, now after kind of going out of KU, and you just sort of have to try to crawl up that bucket again. So it was an adjustment, but it was fun. I always like to kind of shake things up a little bit every couple of years, so it keeps you on your toes.
Do you have any advice for authors who are kind of doing that same transition, leaving KU and going Wide?
In my experience, yes, I would just wait. Everyone, you just have to wait. I feel like you kind of you bounce on a bungee cord, and then you kind of go here, and then eventually you'll get pulled up again. It took me, I think I've been out of KU now for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now, I think. And it's like, you see little, it'll come. You just got to give it time. It's not anything that happens overnight. Nothing in this industry really happens overnight unless you've got something magical. And if you do, could you share some dust? Because that would be great. So
that is one piece of advice that we hear time and time again, is that when you are going wide, patience is king.
Yeah. One of the number one pieces of advice I give to authors, but then also one of the hardest things it is for authors to hear, is that you just have to wait and give it a bit of time for readers to kind of find your book.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just work at it, and you utilize the opportunities that each platform give you, and I try to do those little seminars that, Apple will give out or whatever. And I try really hard to just educate myself. But I also found just getting back into work and getting more books out really is key. Because releasing more books are going to get you further. So if you can kind of just do what you need to do in the morning or whenever for your social media, and take your seminars when you can fit them in, and conferences, and then write. I mean, the time will go by fast.
Funny you mentioned social media, because that is a wonderful segue into my next question, which is, how do you connect with your readers using socials? You mentioned you have a reader group. How does social media fall into your marketing plan?
It's everything. It really is. It's everything. Social media, it's a love-hate. I love it because I've gotten to know the most amazing people, and I've made the most amazing friends. And it's really funny how this day and age you can make friends with readers that you've never met before, and they can be some of your best friends. And it's amazing. And the community and the love and the support. Social media is amazing for that. And it's amazing to get your books out there as well. It's also really draining. And if you don't have the discipline to get off, it's soul sucking, as we all know. It's, I have my safe pockets. I have my reader room that I go into, and I feel very safe, and everybody I hope feels very safe in there. That's the atmosphere I want. There's no judgment. It's just fun. I can't say it on the podcast, but we're a certain way in there, and it's great. And, they're my people, and I love them, and I'm so thankful for them. But social media, yeah, it's I don't know. It's a pro and a con. It's fantastic for getting your stuff out there. It's just, I think that the everything's always changing all the time. The algorithms and sometimes, people say bloggers are amazing, and then readers are just up there. And I think everybody's up there. I think it's just about, word of mouth. And I'm so thankful for every single platform out there that we're able to use, and for readers to take the time to read and review, for bloggers to take the time to read and review, for you guys to, Kobo to be able to share our book for a couple of days, or same with Apple and Amazon or whatever. I mean, there's so much that we can do. It's a matter of just kind of hitting that algorithm and hoping it works.
And would you say social media is the biggest way that you communicate and connect with your readers, or do you have a newsletter that you use as well?
So I'm going to get myself in trouble here with my PR company, because it should be my newsletter I communicate with through mostly, but I don't. Sorry. I am a people person. I want to surround myself, I guess, just like my books. I'm kind of really making this connection right here, but I just surround myself with a lot of people. So yeah, I spend a lot of time, and obviously not when I'm actually actively writing. And, last 2 years I've been writing an insane amount, but I use social media a lot more than I use my newsletter. And that is what we should be using more, because obviously if something was to happen, we have a newsletter to fall back on, and we want that number to grow, which I'm trying to do. But yeah, you'll find me in my social media groups chatting away and just asking them for feedback, or asking them for help, or just making them feel like they're included in this journey, because honestly, they are. I mean, if it wasn't for readers, and where would we be? So I'm always asking them questions on, when I did this in this book, did you like that? Or do you like long chapters? Do you like short chapters? Or who's your favorite character? Who could I thread through? And that's what I'm always doing, which is probably the wrong thing.
Okay, but I have to ask, has there ever been a question you've asked your readers and they give you an answer about their opinion? You're like, no, your opinion's wrong. I'm going to do what I want to do. Or do you always take their input? Not to get you in trouble with your readers now, but
I don't always take
Rachel's screen.
No, it's just, no. It's funny. It's just a really good question. I think because I I lean and I ask my readers so many questions. I also have boundaries where I'm sometimes I'm throwing out a question. Like I don't throw out a question to throw out a question. First of all, I want to make that stated because I don't think that that's fair, especially for how much I try to interact with my readers. So when I ask a question, I get an answer, I'll be like, oh, that's cool. Or, ooh, that's really good or whatever. But yeah, there's been times where people have said things where I'm like, that's not going to work, but they don't know that, right? That's their opinion. So for me, I don't know. I think it's really cool because they open up all these doors in my head and I'll walk through them and I'm like, oh, that's going to work. Or, oh, you know what? That won't. But I never say to them, hey, you know what? That was a really crappy answer because that's not, they really wouldn't like that.
Yeah, we're not out here to alienate readers. Did it take you time to figure out what those boundaries were as far as what questions you get productive answers to versus those that are just not helpful?
Yeah, I think over time after doing it for so many years, at least it feels like a lot of years, 10 years, but I mean, I also think you have your boundaries and whatever, but I don't know. That's a hard question to ask. I guess you kind of just learn as you go. And I don't ask a question that I really don't want to hear I don't ask a question I don't want to hear an answer on.
You mentioned before that your street team is part of your marketing strategy. So can you talk a little bit about how you use your street team, and do you have any advice for authors who are looking to create their own?
Yeah. And I feel like I'm showing my age because I just got schooled a little while ago for it's not called street team anymore. It's called something else. And God, I don't remember what it was, but I call them street teams. So sorry. But I think a street team is great. First of all, for me, it's a tight knit of, I don't know how many we have right now, maybe 30 girls. They're amazing. They are giving me their time. So what I do is I have them come on and I have them, sign an NDA because I'm me. Then I will talk to them about a lot of stuff and I want to know what's going to stay there. So I have an NDA put in place. I have 2 girls that run it. So it's like me and then these 2 girls and then they run them. And I mean, everybody knows that we're on these chats together. That's another thing too, is it's a pro and a con, but to have a Facebook chat for your street team is really good. Throw something quick in there and they'll talk to you about it or you throw them information and they'll take it and run. And then, of course, we have a street team page where they can go and they know that all the information that they need for the week is right there. And that's really how we run ours is I tell my girls, I'm like, hey, girls, this is what's going on. And we have a discussion every once in a while about what the next couple of months are going to look like. And then they take that information, they put it into the street team, and then they say, okay, girls, this is what we're going to do this week or next week, or this is what's coming up. So they can all prepare. They grab that information. We have pre-made posts, pictures or graphics and whatever. And they take it and they throw it up all over social media wherever they can and where they're allowed. And that is key, is where they're allowed. We never want to step on anybody's toes. I think they're highly beneficial. Again, I love surrounding myself around a lot of people. And they're wonderful for that. They're great for feedback. But yeah, I highly recommend having one. And I'm also somebody, though, that doesn't want ginormous ones. And you know what? There's probably something to be said for having a huge street team. You're going to get it further. I guess I just like to be cozy with mine so that they're giving me their time. The least I can do is stop and hang out with them and give them a little bit of my time and chat with them and get their input on stuff. I just think that's all I can give that many people is a little bit of my time. So I try to have a smaller group so that they feel like they're part of my family in this journey.
And how did you go about finding these trusted people to join your street team?
Well, Jamie and Liz came from the very beginning. So they were always a name that I saw all the time popping up and commenting in my reader group. And, they just were always around me and they eventually came in. I think if you're visual and if you're really online and you're really talking to that author and you're really standing out amongst other people, which basically all the girls on my team have over the years, that's how they kind of come in. I mean, we open it up, we give you a form to fill out, again, with the NDA attached to it. And we'll go through and we'll vet. And if there's somebody that we're not really sure about, we're pretty careful. But there's certain criteria that we look for. But for the most time, it's people that we've known and got to know on social media over the years. And knock on wood, it's been pretty great.
I'm going to take a hard left turn into a wildly different topic now. But when we were setting up this interview, you mentioned that you are dyslexic and have a processing disorder. And I am so curious how this affects you as an author, as words are your bread and butter.
Yeah. It takes a village to release a book. Probably takes two for mine. You know why? Okay, so the processing disorder is an interesting one because it's like you had given me a question and I couldn't grasp the answer. When I said, I'm not really sure how to answer that, that's me saying I can't filter that question. It's been a struggle a little bit that way. But it's also made me look at things a little differently in how I approach things. You know, there would be a time where I probably wouldn't do an interview like this because I'd be like, oh gosh, you know, I got to start with the fact that I've got this. You know, I did an interview a couple of years ago on a news station and she asked me a question and I wouldn't compute. And I said, here's a perfect example of what it's like being me and going through something. So then there's a dyslexic portion of it. It's been something I've had my whole life. I think I'm hyper aware of it. So writing is kind of a tool where it kind of slows you down in a way. It slows you down and it helps you kind of just look at how you're writing a little bit differently. I know a lot of times, like my alpha readers, when they'll go through, they'll say, you know, or my editor will go through and she'll take a sentence and she'll reverse it. She'll go, oh, this sounds better this way. And I'm like, really? Because it sounds, you know, okay, yeah, sure. You know, so those are the struggles that I have. But again, like I've got, you know, alpha readers, beta readers, proofers, editor, and then my ARC people go through it. And I'm always telling my ARC team, just because we're at this stage, it does not mean you're not going to find issues. And I know every author probably says that, but I'm saying it because, hey, you know, I may have screwed up something just like with a flip or something. And they've been amazing. They've always come back and said, oh, hey, we found this or whatever. But it's, yeah, I think that would probably be part of my issue or struggles that I've overcome. But there's tricks you can do. So I never write black on white. Hate it. Can't see it. The paths between the words, I can see it, but the paths between the words, they pop up over. So when we were in school, we had color filter sheets, and that would help eliminate that. Well, for computer, I just make it purple. Purple's my color. I can write like the wind with purple. But you put me on black and white and I'm struggling. Even when I have to read off the computer, I want it to be purple all the time. But yeah, color coding really helps. Just having as many eyes on your books as possible. Going back and reading it again with fresh eyes is, you know, huge. And again, I know other authors will be like, yeah, we should be doing that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing it for a different reason. So it's been a struggle, but I think, you know, if I feel like someday I'd really like to be an advocate for this and I don't shy behind it because a lot of people go, oh, and then they, you know, as soon as they hear you've got like a learning disability, all of a sudden they put you into this category. It's like, wait, hang on a second now. Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years on, you know, now I don't want to say on my own because I don't have a traditional publisher. So it's if you want it bad enough and you love it bad enough, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Truly. And I try to tell kids that out there all the time when they hear, oh, you're a writer, you know, what's it like? And it's like, well, it's not easy, but if you love it, and you want it bad enough, you can overcome those issues.
It's so fascinating to me that you went from somebody who just was not thriving in an English class environment and then fell in love with writing. It's just so cool to me personally. I love that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad it is. I mean, you know, like I did acting when I was a child. I did theater. I did some TV stuff. You know, for what Canada offered at the time, I should say, sorry, Nova Scotia at the time, we didn't have a huge film area. You know, we weren't Toronto, but, you know, we were getting into movies and I was doing that kind of stuff. And remembering lines my mom was always my huge supporter of helping me remember my lines. And then I would get in there and I would do it. And again, that visual stuff would take over. And it was so much easier to act. And then growing up in a storytelling family, you know, then coming into this, it's sort of like I felt like it was kind of meant to be, just in a different way. But it's a fascinating thing because of my hinders I have. I do tend to look at like, so, you know, somebody might write and be like, you know, this is I don't know what we call it, a pod, you know, earpod case. And you might write it as this white and it looks like this, you know, and for me, I'm looking at all sides of it. Because that's just the way my brain works. And I believe it has something to do with being dyslexic as you do, or maybe I've created it because I don't want to miss anything. So when I look at things, it's not just this, it's all sides of what we're trying to paint a picture for the reader. And I think that is a really unique tool over the years. And it's rapidly getting more and more precise as I get older. So it's kind of a neat thing I've tapped into in my brain.
That's really cool. And I'm really sorry that I'm about to ask this, but as an actor on the East Coast of Canada, how many productions of Anne of Green Gables did you have to do?
Talk about left turns, right?
That's a Great question. 0, to be honest with you. I didn't have to do it. It was great. Or maybe I may have skipped those ones. I don't know. But no, we did Neptune Theater in Halifax, and we did like Grease and renditions of that. But no, for whatever reason, we never had to do Anne Green Gables. Yeah.
Sorry, you said East Coast and acting. That was the first thing that popped into my mind. I had to ask.
It was like pent up inside her and needed to come out.
It's a very valid question, though.
Thank you so much.
You talked a little bit about how you like reading dark romance earlier. And I was wondering if you have any recommendations that you would give our listeners, or if you could tell us about some tropes or subgenres that you like to read, or romance in general. It doesn't have to be dark romance.
Okay. Well, hold on while I pull my little flag up here, my weird flag. Okay, you guys go. If you want dark, I highly suggest Captive in the Dark by C.J. Roberts. Given the fact that both of her faces didn't go, oh yeah, okay, I'll take you ahead and read it because that was really dark. But that's a really great dark one, but that's on the darker side. I thought that was a phenomenal story. But I mean, I love, alpha male books as well, like Real by Katie Evans was always great. I loved Crossfire by Sylvia Day. My gosh, I just love that one. Gosh, I don't know. I think just, I'm really careful too. And I want to probably state that as well. I'm very careful. If I'm writing a dark romance, I'm not going to be reading a dark romance. I may watch one, but I won't read. I'm very careful because it can seep in sometimes. So I'll tend to, watch something lighter or whatever, but I would probably say Captive in the Dark. Jodi Ellen Memphis is amazing. Inside Note as well. But Sylvia Day's books are Crossfire. I would highly recommend. Again, I'm showing my age, but they were so great when they came out. They were fantastic. There are so many books that are great, but those are probably my go-tos, like This Man and stuff. So
we'll be asking the opinion of our resident dark romance expert here at Kobo about those books, see what she says. And I'm just curious, what are you working on now? What's coming up for you?
Well, you're lucky because I really haven't talked about it too much. So this character has come from a series I'm writing right now, or releasing right now, called Dark Water, which is a spinoff of my Broken and Blackstone series. It's military. But what I'm writing now is a character I pulled through that one. And this would be considered, maybe kind of considered, it's dark, motorcycle, billionaire, organized crime, Vegas, kind of like, basically the idea of it is kind of it's a billionaire. If you have all the seeding, the bad stuff that happens when you have a lot of money and you own all the hotels on Vegas, completely fictional, of course, by the way, just saying that. But if you think about it, to me, it's very fascinating. You have that much money and you own a hotel on the Strip. What are you also doing? So I've created, this hotel and kind of the dealings and the craziness that happens. And it's another kind of, you go left, but you should be going right kind of book, and twists and turns and madness. And I've heavily threaded the Devil's Reach through it again, and have all the wonderful characters that come into play with that story. And I say that lightly. But it's fun. I needed to go back to dark again. So I wrote 4 stories for light, for the Dark Water, and they're light, but they're still romantic suspense, military. But I needed to go back to the other side of the law, which is kind of an interesting to bounce from either side.
Are you planning a trip to Vegas for research purposes?
Considering Vegas is 4 hours for me, I absolutely should. I probably will at some point next year. It'd be silly not to.
Maybe wait till summer is over and it's not like 110 degrees in Nevada.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just before we let you go, can you tell us where our listeners can find you online?
I think the best place to find me is my website. I keep it up to date. I have basically everything that's going to go on there. So it would be authorjldrake.com would be the best place to find me.
Excellent. We will include a link to your website in our show notes. And thank you so much for taking the time to sit and hang out with us today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. This has been great.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you are interested in picking up JL's books, we will include links in our show notes. If you are enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at KoboWritingLife.com. Be sure you are following us on socials as well. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook and Twitter, and at kobo.writing.life on Instagram.
This episode was hosted by Laura Granger and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and thanks to Jodi Drake for being our guest. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.